Getting laid off is tough for everyone, period. But there's this really strange pattern that often happens with top performers. The very things that make someone a star at their job, that drive, that dedication, can actually make the aftermath of a layoff uniquely, well, paralyzing. It's a total paradox, and it leaves a lot of really talented people feeling completely stuck.
So that leads us to the big question we're tackling here. What if your stellar track record, the very thing that made you so valuable to a company, actually becomes a roadblock when it's time to bounce back? I know, it sounds completely backwards, but as we're about to see, there's a powerful psychological reason why so many high achievers feel trapped.
And that reason? It's something called the freeze response. Now, let's be super clear about this. This is not a sign of weakness. It's a normal, hardwired human reaction. See, when you're faced with a huge threat and fighting or running away don't feel like options, your brain has a third choice: just freeze. It's that classic deer in the headlights feeling, that sensation of being stuck in mud. Your brain is just so overwhelmed by the shock of it all that it hits the emergency pause button.
All right, so let's really dive into what's going on inside the mind of a high performer during this. Why does someone who is usually so on the ball, so proactive, suddenly feel like they can't do anything? The answer, it turns out, is tied into the very fabric of their identity.
It all kicks off with this thing in psychology called cognitive dissonance. It's basically a mental tug-of-war. On one side, your brain is holding this deeply held belief: I am a high performer. I'm good at what I do. But on the other side, you have this new, brutal reality: I am being laid off. That conflict creates so much mental static and discomfort that the brain's easiest escape route is to just do nothing at all, to freeze.
And that mental tug-of-war leads to an even deeper issue, something we can call identity shock. You see, for so many high achievers, a job isn't just a job. It's a huge piece of who they are. So when that piece gets yanked away without warning, their entire sense of self can feel like it's collapsing.
I mean, think about it. What does a job really give you beyond the paycheck? It's a daily confirmation that you are valuable, that you're essential, respected, dependable. A layoff just shatters that mirror, and it can leave you questioning your own worth.
And that leads to this really heavy, disorienting question: who am I without this role? And that's not just some philosophical thing to ponder. It's a real emotional weight that can make even the simplest tasks, like just updating your resume, feel like trying to climb Mount Everest. But here's the cruelest twist of all. A high performer's greatest strength, their absolute commitment to excellence, suddenly becomes their biggest trap. Perfectionism becomes this perfect excuse for doing nothing. You tell yourself, I'll start applying when I'm fully prepared, when my resume is perfect. But when you're in this state of shock, ready just never seems to arrive. Look, if any of this is hitting home for you, I need you to hear this loud and clear: you are not broken. This feeling of paralysis isn't some deep character flaw. It is a predictable human shock reaction. And the good news? Anything that's predictable is also solvable. There is a way forward.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the problem. We get the why. Now let's switch gears and talk about the solution. This next part is all about a practical toolkit, a set of actions you can take to break that freeze and get your engine started again. First things first, you have to break the denial loop. You have to make this new situation real for your brain. It sounds simple, but actually saying the words, I am no longer in this job, out loud can be incredibly powerful. Then, taking a moment to actually acknowledge what you lost and what you learned helps you process everything. This isn't about wallowing, it's about closing one chapter so you can actually start writing the next one.
You know that feeling when you're standing at the bottom of a huge mountain? Just looking up at the peak is completely overwhelming. The secret to climbing it is to stop staring at the top and just focus on taking that very first step. It's the exact same thing here. Your first move is everything. It's the spark that's going to relight your fire.
And that first step can be ridiculously small. I'm not talking about launching a massive all-day job search. I'm talking about micro tasks. Seriously, just update one line on your resume. Send one message to a recruiter. These little actions are so small, so non-threatening, that they can sneak right past your brain's resistance. They're the tiny cracks that eventually break the dam.
Because really, that's all it takes. One tiny victory is enough to remind your brain what it feels like to accomplish something. And for a high performer, that feeling is addictive. It kicks off a positive feedback loop, and that momentum becomes the ultimate antidote to paralysis.
A layoff is like a tornado that just rips through your daily life, right? It totally destroys the structure of your days. That's why rebuilding a simple routine is so important. It's like putting up a little tent in the middle of a storm.
It gives you a sense of shelter, a sense of control when everything else feels chaotic. And look, this doesn't have to be some crazy, complicated schedule. The goal here isn't to perfectly replicate a 9-to-5 workday. The goal is just to give your brain a predictable rhythm again. When your brain knows what's coming next, there's just less space for anxiety to creep in. Structure really is the enemy of anxiety. Okay, this brings us to what is probably the most critical mental shift of all. You have to detach your identity from your old company. You need to stop thinking of yourself as an employee of Company X and start seeing yourself as a skilled professional who was simply contracted by Company X. Your skills are the asset. The company was just the client.
This is the fundamental truth you have to burn into your brain. A layoff is a business decision. It's about spreadsheets and bottom lines, not your self-worth. Your value is portable. It's like a backpack full of skills and experience that you carry with you, always ready for the next adventure.
So let's bring this all home. We've walked through the depths of that freeze response, and we've laid out a clear, actionable path to get moving again. We've seen how a top performer can get stuck, but way more importantly, we've seen exactly how they can get unstuck.
So here it is, your path to recovery broken down into 5 key steps. Accept the new reality. Start with those tiny micro-actions. Rebuild your daily structure. Ditch that perfectionism trap. And reframe your identity around your skills. That's your roadmap from frozen to forward.
And here's the best part. For a high performer, that inner drive to achieve is like a rocket engine that's just waiting to be reignited. All it takes is one small spark, that one tiny action to light the fuse. And once that engine fires up, your recovery will be so much faster than you can even imagine right now. So I want you to remember this. A layoff is just one chapter in your professional story. It is not the whole book. You are the author. The pen is in your hand and the next page is completely blank. So the only question left is, what are you going to write?